Hello, hello, hello. Only Meghna and Srinidhi is here. Do we have a session today? Yes, Srinidhi. Only you have joined. Nobody else is coming. What's the scene like? Hello. We just have 3 people joining. It's already 2:49. Okay, while others join, let's discuss how many of you were able to practice what we have covered so far. By the way, what did we cover during last session? Hello. Can you hear me loud and clear? LNC in the chat box if you can hear me.
You people can hear whatever he's talking? No?
For those of you who have joined on YouTube, there seems to be some trouble with Zoom at the other end. So let's wait for a couple of minutes. Can you hear me loud and clear? Are we still having issues? Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. So I was asking how many of you remember what we covered during last session? We have 10 people and 2 responses. Hello, 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 people. Displaying data using groups. Mhm. Others? Repeating groups and data representation. Okay. Responsive page. Responsive page was previous to previous session. Hello, hello, hello. Are you still at lunch break? You have to respond, everyone. Come on. Repeating groups and other things like minimum and maximum height and width. Yes. Okay. So let's start with today's topic, which is pop-up, floating group, and group focus. I don't think we will be able to cover all the three because we have already lost 15 minutes and we have just 1 more hour to go. Okay. So let's cover as much as possible and then we will shift the remaining things to the next session. Okay. So I'll get started. I'll share my screen. So we will go to the repeating group page, which was basically the admin page, right? We displayed all the users over here. So I'll make it a single column and we're displaying the email ID and the date of registration. Okay. Now, let's say we have user details added in the table. Okay. But we want to get more details of that particular user. Okay. And when you click on that particular thing, a pop-up opens with all the details, right? So what is a pop-up? If we go to LinkedIn, click on start a post and a window opens on top of the screen, right? This is a pop-up. It pops up on top of the screen, right? So this is a pop-up. So let's explore how do we create a pop-up and how do we display data in the pop-up and what are the uses of pop-up and so on and so forth. So before we go there, I would like to hear from all of you. What are the examples of pop-up that you have seen? So I showed you what a pop-up is. Ads, okay. What else? What else? Login, yes, sometimes it comes in pop-up. What else? Chat AI assistant. Okay. Notifications. What kind of notifications? Hello, hello, hello. Windows, alert messages. Uh-huh. So, do you recall what happens when you delete files? Do you recall what happens when you delete a file from your system? Or if you're going to take any uh, critical action, like closing the account, deleting the files from your drive, what happens? Everybody is in holy mode. Huh? Nobody wants to respond. Hello, hello, hello. Are we connected? Can you hear me? Do you recall what I mentioned in the first session? If you don't share energy, then I'll not be able to share more information. What do you want? You want to learn a lot, or you want me to just come and give you some this thing and go off? How many of you want to learn a lot? How many of you want to make these sessions valuable? So please respond, guys. Otherwise, how will I know what you have understood and what you have not? Right? Your college is spending so much for you. You have to get the best out of it. Don't come sit for session and just go off. Right? Respond, interact, learn something new, build on top of it. Okay, build your portfolios, which will help you in a long run, right? Which will help you to get a job easier. You can build your own agencies. You can do freelancing. A lot of opportunities will open up. So please. Okay. So coming back, what will happen if you delete a file or if you do any critical actions on any platform? Let's try it out. Right. So I'm going to delete this particular page. What came? What came? Ask for a confirmation, right? And this confirmation, if you see, is coming in a pop-up, right? Delete page, admin, confirm, cancel, right? And I'm not sure how many of you remember, but if you had used some old Windows system or something like that, every time you delete a file, you would get a confirmation, right? And even now, if you do shift delete, then you will get a confirmation because you cannot recover it back from recycle bin. Yes. Okay, so let's understand how do we create a pop-up and how can we use it. It's not only meant for confirmation. You can use pop-up for multiple purposes. For example, if we go here, we have opened a pop-up in LinkedIn, right? Rather, when you click on start a post, a pop-up will open. Okay, we have seen similar functionality even on Twitter, right? You click on it and it opens. Okay, so for pop-up, you just have to search for pop-up, or if you have to see where exactly does pop-up, where is pop-up available, it's in the container group, right? So we have group, we have repeating group, then comes pop-up. So you just click on pop-up and click anywhere, and it will open a pop-up for you, right? Now let's call this as pop-up user. Okay, so what we are going to do here is we are going to add the details of the user. Okay. So you can see that type of content. Okay, we will select it as user because we want to display the details of the particular user in this pop-up. Okay, because we want to display a particular user's details, we are going to make type of content as user. Let's go back to repeating group for a moment. And we had two groups. One is header, right? One more is user details, right? Header type of content doesn't matter actually, right? So we can actually remove this. We can remove this, doesn't matter because we are not displaying anything with regards to the user in that particular group. We are just having static text, right? We have two texts. One is email and other is registered date. Okay. But in this particular group, we are displaying users email and users registered date. And that's why this particular group, we have made it as type of content as user. Okay. And then within the group, the elements, parent group users email. Here, parent group users creation date. Right. And this particular group is in row layout because we want elements to come one besides the other. So we will go to pop-up user, right? And we have made the type of content as user. Data source, I will not yet add it over here. Okay, we will look into that a bit later. I will add a text element, which will be user details. Let's call it as, right? I'm going to make this as header 3. And we are going to display the details over here. I'm going to add one more text, and this will be parent group users email. Similarly, I'll add one more text, which will be parent group users. Creation date, right? Which is equivalent to registration date. Okay. And I'm going to layout, add gap spacing between elements, and let's say 12. So there is gap between each of these elements. Now, we don't have the name available in any of the users because we had not added. So let me add a field called name, and I'll call this as text, right? We can also add date of birth, and this can be date field. So I created two new fields named name and date of birth. Okay, we'll go back here, and because these are not filled in yet, we will add an input field Okay, allowing the users to add name. Enter name. Likewise, we will add a date time picker element. We'll allow them to pick the date of birth. Okay. And to save this, we will add a button. We will call it as save. Okay. Now we can actually expand this all the way. We can expand this all the way. We can expand this all the way. Okay. So now we have this pop-up which has two details being shown. One is the user's email. One is the user's creation date, which is the registration date. Okay. We added two more fields, which is name and date of birth. And the user can actually input these two information and click on save. Okay. So what should happen when we click on save? What should happen if we click on save? Save in database. Okay. So there is an action called make changes to thing, right? So we will use make changes to thing. What is the thing that we want to change here? What do we want to change here? We want to change this particular group pop-ups user, right? Whatever user details is there in the pop-up right now, that user's details needs to change. So I'll go back to workflows and I will use parent group user. Okay. So let's go back for a moment. So this button is added in pop-up user, right? So pop-up user is of type user. So this will hold some users details. Okay, one of the users details will be added in this pop-up. And when we click on save, for that particular user, we are going to save the name and date of birth. And that's why we are referring to parent groups user. Now, what are the fields that we want to update? The name and date of birth. Okay, name is coming from input enter names value. And date of birth is coming from date time picker is value. Okay, once we save, we can also hide the pop-up, right? So hide the element. And we can also clear whatever we have added, right? So we can go to reset inputs. So whatever we have entered will actually get reset. Now, we have done getting the details and saving it to database. But how do we open this pop-up? So whenever I click on this particular group, which is group each user, where we have each user's detail, we can open the pop-up. So I'll add the workflow to this particular group at the group level. And the workflow to open the pop-up is very simple, right? Elements action, show. And what do we want to show? We want to show the pop-up user. Now closely observe. I will log in as one of the users. Closely observe. Okay. I'll have to change the condition here because we had added up to 3 for this one. I'll just make it as index is 1. I'm going to click on this particular group, the first one. The pop-up has opened, but the user details is not being shown. Any guesses why? Can anybody guess why are we not displaying any users details? Any guesses? Yes, no? We have hidden it? No, we have not hidden it. Right? This is visible. This is also visible. Okay. So the reason is if we go to pop-up user, we linked it to user, but we have not mentioned which user, right? The reason why we have not mentioned which user is because when I click on the first user, I want the first user's details to go. When I click on the third user's details has to go. Likewise, when I click on some other user, that particular user's details has to go, right? So the details, the user's details going to pop up needs to be linked to the user clicking, right? So when I click on this particular group, we are showing the pop-up, plus we also have to send that particular user's details to the pop-up. So for that, when you click here to add an action, okay, Bubble will recommend the option, right? You can use it, or you can also go from here, elements action, display data, right? So if you select this one, it'll ask you which element do you want to use for sending the data. In this case, we are using pop-up user, and the detail that we want to send to that particular group is current sales user, right? So now what happens is when I click on this particular user, this user's details will go here. When I click on this user's details will go here. If I come back and click on this one, this user's details will go. So based on what is the group that I'm selecting, right? That particular detail will be shown over here. Not just that. Okay, let's say, for example, I'll take this itself as name. I'll put it over here. Okay, I'll randomly select some date. I'll click on save. Now, if we go back to the database, right? And if we check which is the user which has got the details. Okay, let's quickly search. Yeah, you can see it has come for the same user. Okay, we can also display this in the front end. Now that we've got two more data to show, I'll add this, right? So I'll make this as name. Also, I can shift the name to the first column, right? And we will copy paste, make this as first, and this will be name. User's name. And we don't need the margin of 20. Okay, neither for this one nor for this one. In fact, we can remove the margins from here also. Okay, because we have understood a simpler method, which is to go over here and add spacing. We can add 15 and we can add 15 over here as well. Okay, likewise, we can also add the fourth field, which is date of birth. I'll make this as DOB. We can copy paste this one and make this as GOB as well. Okay. So we can change this to 100 because the date can fit in 100. The DOB can also be made as 100. Okay. So if we go back to this particular page, only one of the user's details will be filled in. because we just used that particular user to fill in the details. Right? Now I can go to this particular user and make the name as XYZ, select some date, click on save. It is getting saved. Okay. So did you understand the use case of pop-up? Of course, you can use pop-up for a lot of use cases, but did you at least understand one of the use case? Okay. So if you see here, they have not sent any details to the pop-up because the pop-up is empty, right? We are supposed to create a post, right? And that's why it is empty. So if you want to create anything new, then you can open a blank pop-up. Of course, these details are there, but you can see that this is like my name, okay, or this particular account's name, okay, the profile image, and whom to post, right? So you can make this visible to anybody or connections only, okay? But what is dynamic is this particular thing, okay? Understood what is a pop-up? Can we move on to the next one? +1 in the chat box if we can move on to the next one. People on YouTube have become very silent now. Okay. The next one is floating group. Okay. What is a floating group? Now closely observe when I scroll through, right? Watch the entire screen and tell me when I scroll through what does not change at all. I scroll. There's something that does not change at all. What is that? Others, come on. One is this nav bar. Okay. You can see that it does not change, right? Even if I scroll, this does not go anywhere. It's there. There is one more thing which is not changing. What is that? There is one more thing which is not changing at all. Yes, the messaging part, right? This is not changing because they're using something called floating group. Okay. What will scroll is any elements added on the page. Okay. Any elements added on the page, you will be able to scroll. Floating group is not added on the page. It is floating on the page, on top of the page. Okay. I'll show you example for that. So let's go to a new page. Let's call it as floating group. Now, the way we add a floating group is very simple. Search for floating group, okay, or it's in the containers just below pop-up. So click on it and click on over here. And let me quickly change the color so that you can easily check it out. Right, so this is a floating. Okay. Now there are a few parameters that you can play around with. Vertically float relative to. Okay. top. You can say bottom and it will go to the bottom of the page. You can make both and it will be from top to bottom. Okay, you can say nothing and it will stick to the top. I don't know what nothing means here. Okay, but we will go with top for now. Similarly, you have the option of left, right, and center. Okay, now I'll keep it top and center, and the width is 320. I'll remove this. So it will be for the entire width of the screen, right? We have already seen this min width, max width, and all of this. It applies to floating group also. Okay. Floating group is exactly like group. Okay. With regards to all the layout options that you have, just that it will be floating on the page. Okay. It will be floating on the page. Now, I'll give you a very simple example of why do we call this as floating group, or how do we prove that this is floating, right? I'll go to a group. I'll add a group, right? I'll make the height of this one to, or let's say we'll change the height of this one to 100. Okay. Now this particular group is 280 is to 280. Okay. Now the page itself is fixed. I'll change this to column. Now you can see that this particular group is actually going on the top. What happens when we have a column layout? Normal groups will come one below the other. Right? You can see that this is a group, this is a group, and both of this are coming one below the other. But when we have a floating group, okay, if you add any element on the page, it will act as though there is no floating group at all, right? This will not consume any space on the page. You can add any elements and it will go to the top left or whatever is the alignment. This is floating on the page, on top of the page. Okay. Now, if you want this group to come below this particular floating group, like we have here, right? So you don't want these sections to go on the top. You want it to come after the floating group. Okay. So what we have to do is, if the floating group is of, let's say, 75 height, fixed height, then you have to add a top over here of, let's say, 95. So that you are not overlapping both of this. It's coming one below the other, right? And the remaining groups will follow along. Okay. Now let me make this particular group. I'll add a color to both of these groups. Right, so we will add some color. This group and also this group. Okay. And let's change the height of this particular group to, let's say, 3000. Now, when we preview this particular thing, okay, this green group, which is added on the top, will stay there even when we scroll through. You can see the scroll bar over here, which is scrolling to the bottom, but the green on the top will always remain there. Okay. And it will remain there because it is a floating group. Is this clear, everyone? Now, adding elements within this particular floating group, okay, is as easy or as simple as adding in the groups. So if you want to add, let's say, this kind of elements. You can use buttons, make it as icon and label, right? Icon over here would be home. Okay, go with some other this thing. Use home, make this as home, right? And we can also change the icon placement, top, right? Like we have in this case. Okay, you can also change the background color. You don't need a background color. Okay. So this is how you create it. So it'll you can change this to what is your column, row, whatever we discussed with regards to group formatting. You can do the same formatting for this floating group as well. Like I mentioned, floating group and groups are very similar. Only thing is floating group will be floating on top of the page. Group will be added to the page. Now let's quickly check how do we create this particular floating group. Okay. So I'm going to add a floating group. One more floating group. Okay. It by default always goes to the left top. Now tell me, how do we get this over here? How do we get it over there? How do we get this to the bottom? Let me first change the color of this particular group. That color is fine. Let's make it bluish. Let's go with this color. Hello, hello, hello. How do we get this to the bottom? If you don't respond, then we will stop it here. Okay. Alignment, we will change this to bottom. So it has gone to the bottom of the screen over here. But if we go over here, then it would have come here itself. Okay. What is the next thing? We've got this to bottom. I'll just change this one to, let's say 900. Should be sufficient. Okay. What else to change? Hello. Floating index. Why do you want to change the floating index? It's on the left side. Don't we want to get it on the right side? So we'll change this one to the right. Okay. And of course, like we saw, we want this, let's say for 60 pixels itself. Also closely observe, it is not on the exact corner here, right? It has some space. So what we will do is we will add a right of 10 pixels. Okay. Or maybe 20. And the corner is having some curvature. So we will use that as well. So define each borders independently. We will use this option. And top left, we can make it as 20. And top right also we will make it as 20. Right? You can see that we've got that. Now if we go to the page, okay, I'll remove the debug mode equal to true. Okay. If we scroll, this is floating. This is also floating. Are you clear with this? Did you get what is a floating group? Okay, thank you everyone. Now, let's understand what is the third type of element that we wanted to cover today, which is called focus groups. Okay, now let's first see an example of what a focus group is, and then we will understand how do we create it and how do we link it, right? If I click on this particular element over here, okay, the profile section basically, you can see there is a window that opens up which is close to this particular element, right? This is not a pop-up, right? Though it is opened on top of the page, this is not a pop-up. Because when we click on this one, pop-up generally comes in the center, right? But this is coming very close to this particular element. Likewise, when I click on this particular thing, right, it comes over here. Yeah, it opens up here. This can be a floating group, by the way, not a focus group. Okay, this is a focus group. This is a focus group. Okay, I'll show you how do we create a focus group, how do we link it, and why do we use a focus group. Okay, not just that. If I go to like, you can see a group coming up here. Okay. Now this came over here. I'll scroll this a bit. I'll go over here. And now I'm hovering on top of it. You can see that has come over here. So wherever we have this like button, right, this particular thing is coming. Okay. So this is a focus group. So let me add a focus group. Okay, let me just create one more icon over here. Let's change this to row and a gap of, let's say, 20. And this one we can change it to profile. Or let's say person. And this is, let's say, me. Like they have over here. Okay. Now, when I search for focus, group focus, add it, like floating group, it will also go to the top left and stay there. Now, one of the things that you have to add over here is reference element. Which is the reference element that you want to link this focus group to? Right? It will always be reference to another element. Okay. In our case, we want to link it to button me. As soon as you link it to any particular element, okay, you see that button me is here and this has come here. Offset top is 0. So I'll just give some color to this so that you can actually understand the. Let's go with this. I know the color combination is pathetic. Okay, you can see this particular group is sticking to the element from top. Okay, and if I go to offset top and make it as 10, then there will be 10 pixel space between this and this. Okay, it's showing 9 because of the border maybe, but we have added 10. Okay, offset left, you can see the left side of it is aligned. Now, if I add offset left as 10, then there will be 10 pixel space between this and this particular thing. Okay, on the left side. If I want the other way around, I can make it as minus 100 or so. It will go on the left side. If I want this to be on top of this one, I can make it as minus, let's say 40, not 410, 40. It's going on top. So you can play around with plus or minus values and get the pop-up or floating group to show wherever you want it to show. Okay, so offset top, I'll keep it as 10, offset left, I'll keep it as 0. And this is what we have got. Now, focus group is also like a group, just that it is linked to a particular element, and the focus group will be shown besides that element. Okay, wherever you want. You want it at the bottom, you want it at the top, you want it on the left, you want it on the right. You have to play around with offset top and offset left. Okay, now linking these two is not sufficient. What you have to do is, when do you want to show this particular group? So for example, if I go here, right, this particular group will not always be shown. If I click on it once, it will show. If I click on it again, it will go, right? So I click on it once, this group will come. If I click on it again, this will go off. So we will add the similar functionality with this particular button. So when I click on this one, we can go to add workflows, right? We can either use show and hide or use toggle. Right? And what do we want to show? In this case, group focus A. Okay. Ideally, it's always better to rename these things, right? So group focus, let's say me or user. Likewise, floating group also, whatever we are using it for, we can have that. And this is floating group messaging. Let's call this as floating group header. Okay. So we have used toggle, which means if it is not shown, then it will show. If it is shown, then it will be hidden. Now let's quickly check it over here. Okay. Pay close attention. I'll click on this. This is being shown. I'll add a color to it again. Right. Use some light color. I click on it once. The focus group will be shown. I click on it again. It goes off. One of the things with regards to focus group is, if you click anywhere else on the page, it will go off. It will not stay there. Okay. Now I'll show the beauty of focus group. Right. I'll just hide the focus group from here so that I can work on this one. I will move this particular element to somewhere over here. Right. So I'll go to layout of this particular group and I'll probably see something like this. Okay. Which is space around. So I have moved this particular element, but I have not done anything with regards to group focus group or group focus. I'll click on this one. You see this will come here. The reason being, this particular element is always mapped to this particular element, right? You move this one this side, this will also move along. Okay. The offset that we have in this particular group focus, right? You can see it is linked to button me, and with regards to button me, the offset top is 10, offset left is 0, which means it is sticking to the left of this one, and from the top it has 10 offset. Is this clear, everyone? Are you able to follow? If you understood what is pop-up, floating group, and group focus, type in +3 in the chat box. Only 3 people understood. How many people are there, by the way? We have only 7 participants now on Zoom. Okay. Okay, no worries. So I hope this was helpful. That's all we had for today. And I hope you all will practice these things because, again, very, very important. You can go to any platform and you can see that we will have a floating group. Okay, we will have a pop-up. We will have a focus group, right? Group focus. Even if we go to x.com, I'm not sure if I'm logged in here. So you can see that this is a pop-up, right? Click on got it. Click over here. Okay, this is not opening a pop-up. This is image. So if you click on message, then it opens a pop-up, right? Now this is a floating group. The left menu is a floating group, right? Click on these 3 dots. What happens? This is a group focus. Click on this filters. This is a group focus. Right? So these 3 are very, very critical in terms of building any web applications because you can see this everywhere, right? You can see when I scroll, what do you say, hover on top of this one, a group focus is being opened. Right? So Abhilash, for creating pop-up, it is necessary that we should have repeating group? No, not necessary. Where do we have a repeating group over here? Right? It could also be on a button click. So think of it as a button. I click on this and pop-up opens. Only for group focus do we need an element because that is always mapped to a element. Is that clear? Any other questions from anybody? We can take a couple of more questions and then wind up. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat box, or you can also unmute yourself if you have joined on Zoom and ask your questions. You can check any platform, right? Any web applications, and you will mostly find these 3 things along with repeating group added. Right. So let's go to Airbnb and check what is it. You can see that when you scroll, this particular top section is always here. Right? Show map. This is a floating group, right? You click on this thing, there's something that opens up. This is a group focus, right? Click on filters. What opens is a pop-up. So these three things, along with repeating group, okay, is used widely across all the web applications. Okay, let's go to Zomato. I hope it allows me to enter without login. Yeah. So they don't have anything floating on their screen. Let's click on this one. What you have is a group focus, right? Linked to this particular group. Okay. And let's say I click on this dining, it opens a new page. Okay. If I click on this one, it opens a new page. If I click on this one, it opens a new page. Come on. Okay, now if I click on this one, this is not a pop-up. Let's see, look at even. That also opens up. They made everything static pages, or rather on the page. Not really too much of, let's say, comment. Okay, no. Share, review link, copy to clipboard. Okay. They seem to have used very minimal of floating groups and your focus groups. Sorry. Yeah, so one of the things is, yeah, you can see that they've used very minimal of those things. Okay. What happens? Login. Yeah, this is a pop-up. Okay, like somebody rightly mentioned, login or sign up. So this is a pop-up. Okay. If we click on this one, what happens? It's just taking us to rating page. Okay, so you can check various platforms of your choice and identify what are the floating groups, pop-ups, and group focus available on that platform. So that will be the exercise for all of you, right? Before our next session, please explore multiple platforms. Make a note of what are the pop-ups that you saw on those platforms, what are the floating groups that you saw on that platform, and what are the group focuses that you saw on that platform. Okay, is this clear, everyone? Do you have any questions before we wind up? Okay, Abhilash has one more question. Without data, how will repeating data look like? I mean, why do you need a repeating group if you don't have a data? Repeating group is used only when you have a list of things, right? It's like an array, like we discussed last time. When you have an array and you want to display that, you use repeating group. Is that clear, Abhilash? Any other questions from anybody? Okay, then we will wind up for now. And we will connect on Monday. Thank you, everyone. Happy Holi. Enjoy your weekend and see you on Monday. Bye.